Hey, good morning, afternoon, or evening, good people, wherever you are, wherever you happen to be, and however we're together. Thank you for being here. I'm Dave, and this is Dave's Head. So, what's in my head? So, the first thing that pops into my head, number one, is, and I usually don't say his name on this podcast, but I'm going to Trump being arrested. Now, you don't normally celebrate the downfall of someone or negatives in someone's life. Karma, as I like to say, is powerful and timely. So, not necessarily celebrating per se, but happy to see the wheels of justice actually turning as they should. Now, burden of proof is on the city of New York or state of New York. I forget which one is bringing it. I think the state of New York is bringing it. And we all have a presumption, supposedly, of innocence until proven guilty. But 34 counts of falsifying business records was the indictment that a number of his peers in New York felt worthy to bring forward. And obviously, it was a media frenzy shit show that occurred last week in New York with him flying in, staying the night, going over to the court. I will say, that brief moment that you saw him leave after he was fingerprinted before he walked into court, I will say he looked pretty shook. We've seen him in debates. We've seen him do press conferences. We've seen him in uncomfortable sort of situations. In that moment, he looked a little shook. I mean, I'm sure anyone who's gone into a situation where they've been arrested for the first time, I'm guessing this is the first time, but I'm pretty sure it is, fingerprinted for the first time. Having someone, if you've never been fingerprinted before, having someone sort of manhandle, but not really manhandle, control, if you will, is probably a better term, your fingers to roll them on, they roll it on the fingerprint pad. I don't believe they did a mugshot picture. I mean, who doesn't recognize him? But it's also a case of what's good for me should be good for thee. I don't care if it's Donald Trump, Barack Obama, Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, Charles Barkley. Name famous people who are really Shaquille O'Neal, really, really, really hard to not know them in public. If I, Dave, gets a mugshot if I'm arrested, Donald should get a mugshot if he's arrested. It's not a thing where, oh, he's so noticeable or noted. You always know who he was. I don't care. What's the standard procedure for anyone who's arrested? And that's the way it should be. Doesn't matter about your popularity, your money, your fame, none of that stuff. So I was a little disappointed that the justice system was not as blind in that situation because he should have been mugshotted. And it's the practice of the New York to not make them public. Cool, perfectly fine. Didn't need to see it, but he should have been mugshotted if he wasn't. Now, there was the, fear by Trump's lawyers that maybe that mugshot might have been released to the public and, used, blah, blah, blah. Except there were t-shirts being sold the day he was arraigned with a fake mugshot on it. It's all a clown show, right? It's all a clown show with this guy. Just like, and I didn't watch a single second of it, but just like the supposed ranting, lunatic lace speech that he gave Mar-a-Lago the next day, there are instances, again, where what's good for me is not good for thee. If I got arrested, started doing Facebook Live or YouTube Live or Instagram Live or TikTok this or whatever medium I decided to choose, where I'm disparaging a judge, his family, his daughter, I'm disparaging a DA, his family, his daughter, I'm disparaging this person, I'd get hauled into court and told to shut up. There'd be a gag order. But because there's the belief in, this presidential campaign that he's running, not grifting people for money, he's actually running to be president, or can be doing both. But because he's running for president, we're not going to tell him he can't talk about the case. Okay, but can you tell him to stop attacking people who, at least on surface, are just doing their job? You didn't like the way a judge did a trial or case against your company. Okay. What does it have to do with this? So now that the judge has not issued a gag order, you still go out and talk trash about him. And his supporters just jump on the board. Oh, yes, yes, yes. Is this what we want to teach our children? This is how you're supposed to behave? The problem is if I did that, or say Barack Obama acted this way, or say Joe Biden, or say, who was the guy who ran against Trump? Not Kennedy. I can't remember his last name right now. But say somebody else did it. People would be jumping all over them. These same supporters, the same news networks, quotes, would be jumping all over them. This is not the proper way a president should be acting. But it's okay for Trump. It's okay for Trump to talk about disabled people. It's okay for Trump to talk about the mentally and physically disabled. It's okay for Trump to talk about people who are just exercising their right to protest or free speech. It's okay. But if somebody does it about him, suddenly you're attacking Trump. Can we just call it what it is? And while we're on the subject, at the earliest convenience of the American people, can we start pulling our politicians and those eligible to run for president from a different bucket? I mean, how many years in a row are we going to keep getting the same type of candidates over and over and over again? It's like recycled hot garbage. And I've been preaching this for years, that we need term limits in Congress. Every level of the federal government, those branches, the executive branch, judicial branch, and legislative branch. Let's go back to how laws are made 101. Executive branch, judicial branch, and legislative branch. Every one of those branches should have term limits. Presidents do. SCOTUS, Supreme Court, does not. And lawmakers don't. All three branches should have term limits. And so until that happens, where all three of those have term limits, we're going to keep getting this recycled crap every year, or every 2 years, or every 5 years, or 2 years, 4 years, or 6 years, depending on if you're a representative, president, senator, respectively. We desperately need a new crop. And I'm going to get into something in a little bit, but it has to come from our younger generation. I believe the age limit for president is either 32 or 34. I can't remember which one exactly. To be president, you literally just have to be a United States citizen and this year's old. Clearly, you can be a convicted felon. Trump can be convicted of all these things, get a slap on the wrist, do probation or whatever, and be elected president, and then pardon himself. That can happen because there's no requirement that you do not have a felony on your record. There's no requirement whatsoever. You can be a convicted murderer in this country and literally get out of jail and go be president. It can happen. The second thing that's on my mind is the crap that's going on in Tennessee. And this is kind of tantamount, right, to what's going on in Florida. And you might notice that I'm wearing a shirt here that I planned on wearing. I say planned on because there may be a slight change. I talked about some of my summer travel plans in the last episode. I may or may not take the Florida trip just because the weather sucks so much this coming weekend. But I plan to wear this shirt in protest to the stuff that the Sand Cry, we'll call him the Sand Cry, because he's always crying about something. Woke this, woke that, shut up. But protest to what he's doing. And I urge you to look up Ruby Bridges if you don't know the story of her. And literally this would have probably been considered wokeness back in the day by these people who scream woke, woke, woke. Please ask them to define it. If you get in a conversation, stuck in a conversation, and I'm jumping around, I'm going to come back to this, but if you get stuck in a conversation where somebody starts screaming woke, 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 ask them to define it. It's like critical race theory. I've talked about that before. Ask them to define it. And I promise you the laughter will be there for you for days. But in Tennessee, there were two representatives, Justin Jones and Justin J. Pearson, who are no longer members of the Tennessee House of Representatives, at least at the time of this recording, although by the end of today, that may change, because they were expelled by their Republican colleagues. Now, they were expelled because they participated in the protests over gun violence, because another mass shooting that took the lives of a number of children. And of course, you get instantly the debate between more guns, less guns, somebody's trying to take your Second Amendment right versus no, we just want you to not let crazy people get guns anymore. And it just goes back and forth. One person or one side demonizes the fact that we're even talking about guns after a mass shooting in the school, and that we just need armed teachers and have armed guards in schools, by the way, place that should be safe. Churches, we probably should do that too, according to them, because there was a church shot up with all black people in the South. And the funny thing is, I didn't hear about security guards in churches then, but they participated in protests also with a third representative who was a white woman. I can't remember her name right now. And so the two black gentlemen representatives were expelled by a huge portion of the vote. And the white representative was not expelled, I believe, by just one single vote. They didn't get the majority or 2/3 I think they needed to expel him. Now, they said that they violated decorum of the House representative decorum, which the maximum penalty should have been, I forget the exact term, it's a sanction. But that's what it should have been. They should have been sanctioned, if you will. But instead they were expelled. Which brings to the table whether this was a racial thing, whether it was a you don't come at us this way thing, whether it's we want to remove representatives who represent a huge portion of Tennessee, and a huge black portion, by the way, but a huge portion of Tennessee, or if this was just supposed small government, using quotes, Republicans using government to silence people. Yeah. But to me, this made these individuals martyr. I don't think this is what they expected to come from this. A lot of times, I don't think they think these things through. I don't think they go, if we do this, here are the possibilities, and let's plan for these possibilities. I think they go, we want to do this, let's do this. Because look at what's going on in Florida. Mickey Mouse is kind of winning that battle. DeSantis Cry, is losing the battle, if you will, right now to Mickey Mouse, to Disney World. But to come back to Tennessee, I think it made these two men martyrs, if you will, because Vice President Harris made a hastily unscheduled trip to Nashville. President Biden called them to offer support and invite them to the White House. Their local respective districts, their boards in those districts have the power to reinstate them by, I believe they just need a majority vote of those boards for those different counties. And as of what I read earlier, one of the two already has pretty much that secured. And I think the other one has a meeting on Wednesday where he may be secured, or those votes may be secured as well. And so by the end of this week, you may be looking at all the pomp and circumstance of voting them to be expelled from the House of Representatives in Tennessee, to their popularity shooting through the roof, to them becoming martyrs based on what you want to claim the basis for the expulsion was. And they're back in because the constituents who voted them in reappointed them to the position after they were expelled. And so you ask the question, what did you gain from that? Except to show that you try to be heavy-handed from a government perspective while at the same time claiming to be about small government. But one thing I never want to hear, especially in Tennessee, I never want to hear about cancel culture ever again. Because again, I'll remind you, the harshest penalty should have been a sanction against them. And I apologize because I cannot remember the name of the sanction. It's not a quash. It's something else. That should have been the harshest penalty, not expulsion. Expulsion was a heavy-handed approach to this. It was kind of one of those, sledgehammer to a situation that required a slight mallet. Right? It should have been sanction, move on. That's it. But I don't want to hear about cancel culture ever again, because literally this is the epitome and definition of what canceling someone is, or attempting to cancel someone. You attempted to expel them from a position their constituents rightly voted them into because you didn't like them participating with the constituents to protest things that you were about to do or which you have not put enough effort into, i.e., preventing school shootings. But Republicans in these areas don't even hide their intentions. It's really a power grab in many ways, and also very undemocratic. I mean, think about this. The greatest power in our legislative bodies is not the lawmakers who write the laws, it's the power that put them in position to write those laws. And that power comes from the people who vote, not from the legislation. Without the people who vote, those legislators would not be in power to legislate. And so to then take that respected, should be, revered, definitely is, because they do more than they should be allowed to do to get and maintain that power. But to take that power that the constituents have granted you and use that to expel two people for protesting peacefully, mind you, is a power grab. You already have majority. And I believe they have supermajority in Tennessee. So this is really one of those things that's go psh, 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 slap you down, slap you down, slap you down. You will do as we say or else. But they pretend that drag shows are more of a threat than, say, unhinged racists free to carry weapons of wars, or mentally unstable free to carry guns with magazines that, are weapons of wars in the amount. Because, the Second Amendment clearly, or what's trending in this country, the Second Amendment clearly trumps life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Ask yourself, when's the last time you heard those three words used by anybody in politics? Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Think about the legislations that's passed in the last 5 years. When have you heard someone go to the floor of their respective hall, House, Senate, bully pulpit of the president, campaign stops, stomps, speeches, all that stuff? When's the last time you heard someone justify what they want to do or what they have done using the words life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness? Think about it. Every law should be written with those three things in mind. That everyone has the right to their life, to live it the way they want to. Everyone has the right to liberty, to do as they want to. And everybody has the right to a fair pathway to happiness in this country. That's what all the laws should be based on. But are they? That's an easy answer. No, we know they're not. And whether it's Democrat or Republican, I have my problems with both. However, I fully admit it, if you don't know by now, you should. I have bigger problems with Republicans than I do with Democrats. But it's like 55-45 on my little sliding scale. I'm not a big fan of either one. But I don't want to hear about cancel culture. I don't want to hear about any of that anymore. Because those who applaud this, I promise you, were screaming from their rooftops about cancel culture in this country. That I can guarantee. What's in My Head is brought to you in part by Digga Movers, your safe and swift moving company. An A+ rated, one-stop shop, licensed and insured moving company, providing local and long-distance services on the move. For more information, visit their website at www.diggamovers.com or call 1-888-77-DIGGA. That's 1-888-773-4436. The last thing that's on my mind is kind of Texas being Texas. Sergeant Daniel Perry. If you don't know, look him up. He was convicted last week by a Travis County jury of fatally murdering 28-year-old Garrett Foster during a George Floyd protest in Austin. I've been to Austin. Beautiful town. Great food. Got my tattoo there. One of my tattoos there. He faces up to life in prison when he's sentenced. Now, witnesses testified, multiple witnesses, that Foster, the one who was murdered, who was open carrying, I believe, an AK-47, some sort of assault rifle. He was open carrying, which was 100% legal in the state of Texas. That's what you want in Texas. That's what you get. Witnesses, multiple, testified that Foster never raised his rifle towards Daniel Perry. Witnesses also testified that Perry seemed to drive threateningly into a crowd of protesters before shots were fired, and his actions seemed intentional. But yet, Sergeant Daniel Perry contended that his actions were in self-defense, i.e. stand your ground. To which a jury of his peers said, I don't think so. Guilty. I thought we all wanted law and order. That's what I thought. Right? Law and order. That's what we asked for. A jury convicted him. Multiple witnesses and his own social media, by the way, because and I don't know the exact quote, but he basically said, I'm going to go shoot some people. He put on social media something else. He commented on something that Trump said about protesters, and he said something about bring them to Texas. They won't be able to handle us, or something like that. Something to that effect. It was very premeditated. But the governor of Texas, whose name escapes me right now, and it's quite okay because there's no need for it, is vowing to pardon Sergeant Daniel Perry, a man convicted of murder. He's vowing to pardon him. Here's a catch, though. According to the Constitution of Texas, the governor of Texas has no power, zero, to unilaterally pardon someone. So how can he pardon him? He needs the Board of Pardons, I think that's the correct name, Board of Pardons, to recommend that he is pardoned. Only then can the governor of Texas issue a pardon. So he's relying on, and he's putting pressure on, by the way, which I don't know how this is even legal, but he's putting pressure on the Board of Pardons to issue a recommendation to pardon Sergeant, by the way, Daniel Perry, so that he can pardon a man who, on video, mind you, in his interrogation or interview with police, said the words, I didn't want to give him a chance to point it at me. You know? That's exact words. I'm 99.9% sure I got the quote exactly right. I've watched it so many times. It's kind of embedded in my head. But the gist of it was, I did not want to give him a chance to point it at me. You know? Which I think you can ask a 4-year-old that if someone says, I didn't want to give you the chance to, that means you did not. So let's replace the words. I didn't want to give him the chance to point it at me. Replace the words. He did not point it at him before he fired, which is key, which is probably why a jury of his peers said guilty. In your own words, you said you didn't want to give him a chance to point it at you, which means he did not point it at you. I didn't want to give him a chance to punch me. Oh, okay. So you struck first. It's kind of how we would all look at it, right? Seems pretty simple, but the governor of Texas says, I'm going to pardon him anyway. And I'm going to. Again, Republicans talk about small government. Small. They want to blame it on, this progressive DA brought the charge and blah, blah, blah. Here's the thing. And there are people who can say this about me personally because it's things that happen in my life. We all have the opportunity to present our case. Right? In my case, not so much. And if you know me personally, you know the story. And if you were there, you know firsthand what happened. But regardless of that, I still respect the institution of the court system. I more so respect juries than I do just judges. I will 100% say that. Convincing a jury of your peers of your innocence, to me, is a lot easier than convincing one person. 12 people versus one. It's not that 12 people are harder to convince collectively. It's that you have 12 opinions who come together to look at things from different perspectives. 12 different perspectives, in fact, plus the alternates. if they're needed. Whereas a judge, singular bias, singular thought, singular process, singular perspective is very hard to change when there's no one, and I mean no one, to convince them otherwise. No other points of view to offer. So I'll always respect 12 over 1, and lesson learned in my own personal life. But this notion of small government, we hear about it all the time. Government's too big, government overreach, government. We are small government, yet here we are. 2 instances I mentioned just this episode where a legislative body used government overreach to expel 2 people who should have just been sanctioned. And here's another where you have a governor of a state trying to override the will, literally, of the people, who looked at the evidence, sat through the trials, heard the testimony, listened to the witnesses, and through the preponderance of the evidence, came back with a guilty verdict. 12 people, plus alternates, came back with a guilty verdict. And one man is going to say, I'm going to use my power to pardon him. And let's not forget, this isn't like a stolen car, or this isn't like, domestic abuse or something non-life taking, life threatening. This is murder, killing. Someone died. Someone lost their life because they care about lives, remember? But someone lost their life. A jury said, you're guilty of taking his life this way, this charge, murder, whatever it was. Somebody who literally didn't sit and listen to the testimony, didn't look at the evidence, none of that, because he didn't, is going to sit there and say, I'm going to pardon him. We don't care about the family, their loss, their pain, none of that stuff. We're going to pardon him just because, I can. Sort of. It's disgusting. It's sad. And if I'm opponents, whoever runs against him next time, I'm slapping this story. Even if he's unsuccessful, this is what he will try to do. I'm slapping this on every campaign poster, every campaign commercial, every time there's a debate. It's my opening topic and my closing finish. They scream small government, but they'll pardon murderers just because they don't like the way juries work. That's what's in my head. So a first of its kind study published in 2020 by The Brink, a publication of Boston University, in Human Reproduction found that couples in North America are most likely to start trying to conceive in September, but they are most likely to succeed in getting pregnant in late November or early December, especially if they live in the southern states. Now, the lead author on this study, Amelia Wesselink, and hopefully I got that last name correct, a Boston University School of Public Health postdoctoral associate in epidemiology, suggested that, quote, couples may time their pregnancy attempts for a variety of reasons, including employment schedules, such as teachers, that's easier in the summer, comfort to avoid being pregnant in the summer hours, or personal choice, they want to have a fall baby. I should note I'm a December baby, which means my parents didn't really care about summer hours, any of that stuff. But I do wonder, and it's my own personal wonder, if anyone studied the correlation between those conception months being the most popular or frequent and eating around the fall sports, football season, Thanksgiving, and how those foods that are eaten during tailgates and Thanksgiving, gatherings of the family, a lot of them are actually aphrodisiacs. Now, some staple and classic tailgating and Thanksgiving dishes, like I said, are aphrodisiacs. And my unscientifically, I contend that football season and Thanksgiving has as much to do with this as the timing of the year. You're probably wondering why I'm talking about aphrodisiacs in the first place. And so I'm going to bring in my guest for this episode, Amy Reiley. She's a speaker, cookbook author, and consultant, as well as a freelance wine writer. Hello, I love some wine. And wine competition judge. She is best known as an authority on aphrodisiac foods. In 2004, she became the second American to earn a Master of Arts in Gastronomy, awarded by France's Culinary Temple, Le Cordon Bleu. In 2006, she released her first book, Fork Me, Spoon Me, The Central Cookbook, cementing her role as America's leading aphrodisiac food authority. She has gone on to author 3 other books, which I'm sure we'll discuss, including one that became an Amazon bestseller in just 1 week. And my favorite thing about her, by the way, she helps film and television studios, including Universal, Netflix, and Warner Media, donate leftover catering to those in need rather than let it go to the trash. With that, welcome to Dave's Head, Amy. How's it going?
Hi, thank you. That was one of the most unique introductions I've ever had. I never correlated football season and sex before, but hey.
Listen, we're here to get into all of it. As I did my background research that I do for every episode, and I looked at this study, and to see the months that were most successful being November, December, I'm sitting there thinking, well, every fall there's football, every fall and winter there's Thanksgiving, Christmas. There's a lot of food being eaten, and we're going to talk about aphrodisiac foods and get into it. But I'm thinking unscientifically, of course, that maybe football and Thanksgiving might be the correlating part. But we'll get into it. Before we do, as I always like to do, I like to have my guests introduce themselves. So if you could, Amy, take a minute, tell the people who you are, what you do, and what you're about.
Okay, sure. So as you said, I'm Amy Reiley. I'm the author of 5 aphrodisiac cookbooks. I've been studying the relationship between food and sex for about 18 years now. And it was the first time I correlated football with aphrodisiac foods, but why not?
Okay. Well, listen, I'm going to take your word for it as the expert here, and we can get into it a little bit. One of the things I was thinking about, we're going to get into the best foods that are aphrodisiacs as well. A lot of red meats. I don't know about you. Tailgating for me, asparagus, a lot of green, broccoli, asparagus, those types of things. Sweet potatoes.
Interesting.
Sometimes.
I've got to tell you, I've never associated tailgating and asparagus. So I'm intrigued.
Especially bacon wrapped asparagus.
Oh, well, there's that. Okay.
Yeah.
I've never had a bacon wrapped asparagus. Maybe you can send me your recipe.
I definitely can do that. Can do that. You don't know what you're missing. It's really simple, though. It's bacon, 3 different peppers, Parmesan cheese, depending on the sauce, mustard, mayonnaise, that type of thing. Wrap it all up and watch it bubble.
Cool.
So let's get into the Q&A, and let's start with the base definition. What is an aphrodisiac food?
So an aphrodisiac is really any food that promotes amorous feelings, or an urge to procreate, basically, if you look at it historically. So really, the foods that have been considered aphrodisiac throughout history, when you start to look at them closely, most of them have one thing in common, and that is they contain a number of nutrients that support sexual health. So really, I kind of look at aphrodisiacs as foods that are going to improve your sex drive or sexual performance. Okay. Or both, if you're, if you choose the right one.
So, yeah, drive and performance. So let's separate the two really quickly. And drive is obviously the desire to. Performance is the performance of.
Right.
Do aphrodisiac foods lean more to one side or the other? Do they impact drive or performance more than the other?
I mean, originally the thought was that they were foods that made you want to have sex. And, in past cultures, they didn't necessarily have the issues that we do with blood flow and heart health and things that can prevent sexual performance. So it really was much more about that drive and desire to have sex, and mostly for the purpose of procreating. I mean, that's what it was. A lot of the foods were for conception. But, today we kind of have to look at both because, and even for people trying to conceive, because we're trying to conceive later in life. And so all of these things, and they all balance each other out. Like you're trying to conceive later in life and it's not working. You may have a reduced sex drive because it's all just it's a disappointment. And so it's all rolled together, and it's really important to kind of focus on eating, making great choices that will put all of those things hand in hand.
Gotcha. And so let me take the skeptics approach for a second and just ask the question, do aphrodisiacs really work?
Okay, so it depends on how you're looking at them. I say yes, absolutely, they do. Now, if you are specifically just trying to get in someone's pants, not necessarily. There are other factors at play. If they have no interest in you, it's never going to happen, right? No matter how many amorous foods you put on the plate, they may kind of be turned on and, go make a booty call somewhere else. I mean, I've heard all kinds of stories. Believe me. That being said, yeah, absolutely. If someone where there's a spark, you can choose certain foods to put at a dinner to kind of heighten that sensuality of the meal and of the moment. And sometimes even, the mind is so powerful that even sometimes the suggestion of, oh, we're having mango because it's a turn on. Oh, we're having chili peppers because they raise your body temperature and you feel like, you get these lusty thoughts. That alone can work as long as everything else is in plan. If you don't have chemistry, you don't have chemistry. No food's going to help.
That makes sense. It also makes sense why I like spicy food so much. But, and by the way, Amy's next book will cover how to escape and find the next booty call if the aphrodisiac doesn't work. So, talking about diet, and it's good that you mentioned that because, as we get older, our body changes. I'm in my 40s, so, I'm an athlete all my life, but I can't run as fast as I used to. And so, can your diet and your exercise change or impact your sexual health? And I think that's an obvious question, but how does it, and as relates to aphrodisiacs?
It's huge. I mean, it can really be such a major factor, and things that you don't even think of that are so simple, like drink enough water, get enough hydration. I've talked to urologists who say that if all of their patients came to them who are having issues with erectile dysfunction, were drinking enough water, they'd lose maybe half their patients. That's pretty big. Wow. And really, it's all about the same kind of diet that you're looking for to improve stamina, heart health. Yes.
Drinks water for those who are listening on Spotify.
Good job. It's funny. I usually have a giant glass of water with me, and today I'm like, why don't I have my water? Yeah. I mean, a heart healthy diet is going to be a sexual health diet as well, because the two are so interlinked. The most important thing for sexual performance is blood flow. And that's for women as well as men. We always think of men and erectile dysfunction because it's such a pronounced problem. But for women, it just correlates to sexual satisfaction. So, there are so many things so many diet choices that influence how much you enjoy sex, how well you're able to perform, all of it.
Now, I will say one thing I've never thought of when it comes to blood flow and sex is the other side, which is the enjoyment side for the woman. I mean, like you said, we always think blood flow, heart health, cardiovascular disease, high cholesterol, all these things we associate with ED or erectile dysfunction.
Right.
But those problems exist in women as well. And so forgetting that in that moment, or forgetting that generally, we forget that sexual health or sexual appetite or sexual enjoyment for a woman is also impacted by those things as well.
Absolutely. Yes. Now, I will say that if you want to improve your sexual health, the food choices are slightly different for men and for women. In fact, on my website, eatsomething.sexy.com, we do have a list of 10 great foods for women to focus on eating for sexual health and pleasure, and 10 for men. And they are different foods.
We'll be checking that out. Let's see. I'm curious. So normally what I do for my guests, I don't look at their websites. I look at their social media profiles, that type of thing. Unless there's a bio thing, which actually you have bio on your website. Oh, right. And so that's specifically what I looked at on your website. I didn't look at the rest of the content because I like to be surprised and educated at the same time as my audience when they talk about their website and that type of stuff. I'm very curious to see how many of those 10 I consume. 10 things for men. So I already mentioned sweet potatoes. Is sweet potatoes one of them?
It is not, but sweet potatoes are a fabulous food. Especially, do you leave the skin on or no skin?
Oh, of course. Yes. Skin on.
Perfect. So yeah, they are a great food in general for overall health. The 10 foods for men include, I actually encourage men to limit consumption of beef and lamb. So we put bison on the list as an alternative. It has a slight, since we were talking about that I'm also involved in environmental causes. It has a slight environmental edge. I mean, it's still, it's still producing green. Obviously, they're still producing greenhouse gases, but there are, just because of how bison are raised, it's a slight environmental edge. So it's a good choice in general for that. But it's a lean source of protein. And since we keep mentioning heart health and how important that is, choosing a satisfying but lean red meat is a really great way to alter your diet slightly. So that's one of them. The most popular one, the one I get the most questions about, is pineapple. Are you a pineapple fan?
Love pineapple. It might be my favorite fruit. I'm pretty sure it's my favorite. I can eat grape, watermelon too, but pineapple is up there.
It might be the best fruit a man can eat as far as their sex life goes. Like,
pulls up my app and adds pineapple to my shopping list. There we go.
Yeah. It aids in testosterone production. It aids in sexual stamina. It has fiber. It gives you, it's full of water, so you get extra hydration from it. It also improves sperm health. So there's a lot going on in the pineapple. But other fruits, you mentioned watermelon. That's also on the list for men. And there's there's a phytonutrient in watermelon that's particularly good for men's sexual health. It's called citrulline. So watermelon is high on the list. And also watermelon, you can see a pattern here. It's another fruit that's really has a high water content. So it's going to help you stay hydrated too. So, yeah.
Yeah, to back up just a little bit, it's something I've been focusing on. I'm not a big water drinker. Never been a big water drinker, despite being an athlete all my life. I've drank water out of necessity, necessity instead of desire is probably the correct way to put it. I literally can't stand the taste of water. But as you can see, I have this on my desk.
Good job.
I've added different things to it. I've added lemon, lime. I've done apple cider vinegar, which is horrible, by the way.
I do it. I know but I do it. Anytime one of my kids gets a cold, I start drinking apple cider vinegar. I'm like,
I don't get colds that often, so I didn't know that was a remedy. But you figure, there's so many benefits to it.
It's it's supposed to be a bit of a, it helps with the immunity and helps you avoid getting the cold, or at least diminishes the severity. So I'm in. I'll try it.
But they say 21 days makes a habit. So I've been trying to consistently drink in 21-day spurts at least, to kind of get past the mental block of the taste. I'm big on taste, whether it's foods, drinks, whatever. So water for me has always been a problem. I used to do those little packets you drop in to give it flavor, but then it's still water. I drink a lot of tea, so in my head I'm drinking water, but it's not the same. We all know it's not the same. But you did actually start answering my next question, which was what food increase men and women's sexual desires. So I know you talked about men with pineapple, watermelon a little bit. Can you give a couple little snippets or a couple samples of the women's list?
So women are always happy to hear that I put dark chocolate on the list for women. Okay. It's actually a source of magnesium, which surprises people. And magnesium helps reduce the pain of muscle cramps, which even includes PMS. So it's good for that. It's loaded with antioxidants, so of course it's good for heart health, and it can even help balance the pH of a woman's vagina. Chocolate. Who knew?
Chocolate. Now, did you say dark chocolate or just chocolate?
It has to be dark chocolate. Darker the better. Cacao nibs, even better. Just straight cacao. Because
I just like saying cacao.
Cacao. But the less cacao there is in the chocolate. You got me to say it again. The less nutritious, the less nutrition there is. So in milk chocolate, there's sugar and milk solids and all of those things that are reducing the health impact of the chocolate. By the way, did you know chocolate has fiber? Dark chocolate is a reasonable source of fiber as well. Yeah. Chocolate, it's a health food.
I'm just going through my list in my head. So I have chocolate in the fridge. I have pineapple cans in the fridge. I have pressed watermelon juice in the fridge. I actually started drinking that a couple months ago. So I do a fast every week. 36-hour fast.
Okay.
And I drink just watermelon juice or water during it, in tea and nothing else. 36 hours. I'm trying to graduate to 48. That 36 is enough. But just going through the list of what I have in my fridge. Okay. Doing pretty good.
Yep, you're doing well. So for women, let's see. We've talked about chili peppers already. I put those on the women's list. That's another great choice. Not only it's a great choice for like if you're planning that evening of seduction, but it's also a good health choice. It's, you know, it's got vitamin C. They're chili peppers. You wouldn't think of it, but they're actually quite nutritious. So, and I know you only eat them in small amounts, but if you eat them every other day or so, it counts. And also, if you're choosing these good foods, you're probably eating less of things that may be detrimental to your sexual health. So, yeah.
Gotcha. McDonald's, Burger King.
Right.
That type of stuff.
Not good. Yeah.
Not disparaging either one. Don't sue me.
But fried food is definitely a libido killer, unfortunately. I love a good French fry, but yeah.
Mm-hmm. Got you. So let's switch a little bit and talk about alcoholic drinks. Now, there are some people that say alcoholic drinks have aphrodisiac effects, and I'm going to make up my own words. I don't think this is a real word, but are there alcoholic drinks that are more aphrodisiac? I'm making up my own word, I think. Than others. And before you answer that question, I'm going to talk about myself and much younger version of myself. My favorite, what I thought was an aphrodisiac drink, was Bacardi Lime and 7-Up. Now, I don't know if it's the lemon lime, the bubblies, or the 7-Up. Maybe it's just my youthfulness thinking, oh, this is aphrodisiac. But are there alcoholic combination, whether it's wine, combination drinks, or whatever, that are more aphrodisiac than others?
So all alcohol is considered an aphrodisiac for the simple fact that it lowers inhibition. Of course, you can't. It's. I hate the word moderation, but of all things, it's the one you have to have in moderation, especially if you have amorous pursuits in mind. But there have been some studies, and there have been studies definitely on wine, in particular red wine, and on sparkling wines and champagnes, that probably would give them an edge over most forms of alcohol. There are some disparaging reports that say beer does the opposite to what we call an anaphrodisiac. And I think that mostly has to do with the bloating factor. And nothing wrong with beer, but it really isn't generally a sexy drink. As for mixed drinks, you were probably on the right track, not necessarily because your choice of drink was more aphrodisiac, but because it's a little bit lower of an alcohol cocktail. Some cocktails contain 2, 3, or more forms of alcohol, and they're much stronger drinks. Yours was a bit of a lighter drink, which is a smart choice. And also, it's a little more of a clean drink. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So that was probably, it had its merits. And honestly, I always tell people, and citrus, by the way, is on the list of the 10 best foods for women. Citrus fruits, nice. All citrus fruits. So what I was going to say is I tell people that if it works for you, if you think it's an aphrodisiac, and it is for you, then definitely it is. It's all in what it's. Everybody is very different. We're all different beings. We all have different feelings and pleasures, and so if it works for you, then for sure keep doing it.
Gotcha. And you talked about something I want to say, because I actually had a partial question that you already sort of answered, but I'm gonna come back to it later. But I want to paint a scene for you with this next one. So you've got one shot at a romantic connection, and I'm putting a little distinguishing mark on romantic connection instead of physical connection, because you can have a physical connection or attraction to anybody, but a romantic connection is different.
Yep.
And I compare it to, some people say, sex versus making love, right?
Yeah.
So picture a room, say, full of candles, and instead of candles, it's whatever your aphrodisiac source is. So, for example, say strawberries is something you choose. The entire room's full of all different types of strawberries as your one aphrodisiac source. If you had that one romantic opportunity, what would be your one aphrodisiac source?
So as I just sort of touched on, I would never recommend any one thing for everyone. And, for a variety of reasons. For example, with strawberries, I know so many people who are highly allergic to them. So imagine if you didn't know about a strawberry allergy. So, or dislikes, like oysters are actually, it's a cliche, but they're actually a fabulous aphrodisiac. But if I gave them to my husband, he would be so insulted that I would even think of trying to make him eat an oyster. that
Now, is that an allergy, or he just doesn't like
No,
it?
he just thinks they're gross.
Okay. Well, yeah. I know people who don't like oysters because of that.
Yeah. Oysters. So for me, you could give me oysters and champagne, and I would be thrilled. My husband hates both.
Oh.
So that will not be on the menu
for.
for.
Who hated champagne.
Oh, he hates it. Yeah, that would not be on the menu for a romantic evening for the two of us.
Gotcha.
He could serve them to me.
Gotcha. So I guess the short answer is it's really the individual person's preferences, that type of thing.
It is. If you're looking at creating romance, it is absolutely, the most important thing is to take into account what that other person likes. Mm-hmm. And that includes, setting the scene. You mentioned a room full of candles, or, some people think, oh, I'm just going to set this room full of candles and instantly we have this romantic setting. Well, I have a neighbor who can't be anywhere near a candle because it will set off her asthma. So, okay. You know what I mean? Like, you really have to you have to know what that person, and I think people would be forgiving, everyone would be forgiving. Like, if she was on a first date and someone was having her over for the first time and he set up a table full of candles, she would be very forgiving. But, you know what I mean? If you know the person well, you really have to, the best way to romance them is to consider their likes.
Yeah. Know thy person, know thy partner.
Yes. That's really...
mentality is like you spoke of before, mentality is a big portion of it. And so demonstrating that you know this person well enough to know what might be an aphrodisiac trigger.
Right.
Probably goes a long way to that aphrodisiac feeling.
In fact, I'm putting myself out of business saying this, but it goes further than the actual food. It really does.
Okay. And so sticking to the food topic, and this is a very general question. On that date, what's the best and worst types of restaurants to go to based on food that might be an aphrodisiac or not?
That's so interesting. I'm actually working on a new ebook based on the 10 best foods for men. And I was thinking last night, I want to include a section of I want to look up, the 10 most popular chain restaurants, not fast food, but okay. Casual to fine dining chain restaurants, and put suggestions of what would be the best foods for them to choose at that restaurant. And this is a little bit of a different thing because I'd be suggesting foods that are going to benefit a man's sexual health, because that's what the whole ebook is focused on. But yeah, I think you can find options almost anywhere. You're probably not, I'd skip the fast food place unless your partner likes nothing better than a great hot dog. It's not sexy. It's not an aphrodisiac, but the gesture is there, right?
So based on what we've talked about, can I go out on a limb and say a steakhouse might actually be one of the worst places to go to?
Yeah. I would avoid the steakhouse because think about it. How do you feel after a meal at a steakhouse? Do you really feel like going home?
I'm ready to go to sleep.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. That is exactly why the steakhouse is not the setting for a romantic evening. Not a good date choice. Not a good, I know couples who have their once a month date night. Don't do it at a steakhouse.
Well, yeah, you're also kind of carnivoring massive loads of, the sides are never small. It's
right. Not only are the sides never small, but they're usually, heavily loaded with cheese, butter, cream, all things that are hard to digest. Your blood's going to go to your stomach when you want it going somewhere else.
Yeah. Okay.
Seafood is good. Seafood restaurant.
That was going to be my next question. In contrast, would a seafood restaurant be a great place to go?
That would be a good choice, unless it's someone like my husband who hates seafood and would be mad at me for taking him there.
So it's just not oysters. It's all seafood. Oh, yeah, that's definitely a first. Well, no, I know people who don't prefer seafood, but you used the word hate earlier for champagne. Does he hate seafood?
He will eat a California roll. That is all.
Does that even count? I don't know if that even counts as sushi. Do we still count that as sushi? I'm a big sushi carnivore, by the way. I consume, I love some sushi, and I used to hate sushi, like I used to hate Brussels sprouts. Now I love both.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, childhood thing. Childhood I actually hated Brussels sprouts. I actually taste them. Sushi, I hated the idea of sushi.
Okay, fair
until I became an adult, and then tasted it. I'm like, holy crap, this is good. You know.
I'm with you. Yeah. Yeah. So, if I took my husband to a seafood restaurant, he'd probably order a side dish. I don't know.
Ouch. Somewhere in the back, the chef is going, what?
Yep.
All right, so you kind of touched on this before, and I was going to make up my own phrase, and I think you almost kind of use the same phrase, but are there such things as counter aphrodisiacs? Something you can take to cancel the effects? And so you kind of touched on something that was the opposite, but I'm thinking more so, like, think drug overdose, and they do Narcan shots, right, where it kind of counteracts the effect, meaning you already consumed the watermelon and pineapple, you're starting to get that feeling. Is there something you can eat or drink to kind of dispel that feeling, or is it just take a walk?
That is interesting. I never thought of that. I mean, there are foods that historically, like for a long period of time, monks were not allowed to consume mustard because it might give them lustful feelings. Mustard's an aphrodisiac. It really is.
Mustard?
Go check it out on my website.
Oh, this is why I love mustard. I don't like ketchup. I only put mustard on my hamburgers, my hot dogs, spicy mustard. That's all.
Yeah.
That's all I need.
Yeah. So,
God, I'm checking this list off. Just check.
But I never heard of or thought about like an antidote.
Like you put on a war movie or something? Like,
right? Yeah, exactly. There was a study in the 90s that found that if you introduced the scent of cherries, if a woman smelled cherries, it was a kind of turnoff, but cherries barely have any smell. So I can't imagine like sticking your face in a bowl of cherries to kind of quell the feeling. I don't know.
Interesting.
Yeah.
What just popped in my head when you said the smell of cherries, I thought maybe like a bowl of wasabi seeds or something, or peas or whatever they're called. Might be, I mean, that thing clears everything.
Yeah, that sounds painful. I wouldn't recommend introducing pain in order. Well,
I mean, pain may also further the aphrodisiac feeling as well.
It might, I don't know. Yeah, because the pain
I like to introduce these random.
Yeah, the pain's going to cause an endorphin rush, and then you're going to have this high, and you're going to, no, not going to work.
That should be an accelerant. There you go.
Yes.
But yeah, no, I'm sitting there, and like I said, I do my research for these episodes and recordings, and I'm sitting there just thinking, obviously, what's in Dave's head, and I'm like, is there like an antidote for aphrodisiacs? Like, something that you can go, poof, feeling gone,
Yeah.
Just curious.
Yeah.
Like start a fight, start an argument. Maybe that's the antidote.
I have had people say to me they were going to check my list of 10 foods for men to make sure they never eat them because they wanted to reduce their sex drive. I was like, well, that's an interesting way to look at it, but okay. Yeah. But most people I talk to, it's really the opposite.
Yeah. I wonder, and again, I'm just diving way too far into this, but I wonder if, like the smell of cigarettes, for some people, a lot of people, the smell of cigarettes is an absolute turnoff.
Yeah.
Like, done. And I wonder if something like that, like you could light a candle, a cigarette smelling candle. I hope nobody makes that. But you can light a cigarette smelling candle and poof, the feeling goes away. I don't know. Somebody listening out there, try it. Let us know. All right. So last Q&A question. If you could briefly talk about all the books that you published, but focus on the Fork Me, Spoon Me, the Central Cookbook, and talk about that one in more detail. What inspired that book, and what do you hope the readers get from it?
Okay. So I have written or co-authored 5 aphrodisiac cookbooks. And as you mentioned, Fork Me, Spoon Me, the Central Cookbook was my first. And it's probably one of my 2 favorites, my other favorite being my most recent aphrodisiac cookbook, which is called Eat Cake Naked. And I co-authored it with a nutritional consultant who, she used to be my assistant actually, and then she went on to get her degree in nutrition. It's all desserts that have some sort of like health component or something that will kind of push your sex drive a little bit. And I really have a sweet tooth, so I put a lot into that book. But Fork Me, Spoon Me was my first and my most popular book. And the idea behind that book was I chose 12 ingredients that are aphrodisiac that you may or may not have thought of as aphrodisiacs. I wanted to introduce people to what they are and why they're aphrodisiac, and then some recipes so they know what to do with them. But really, I wrote that book to be more of a pleasure to read than necessarily. You don't have to use it as a cookbook. And I know a lot of people who have bought the book and said they've never ever cooked from it, but they would keep it by their bedside for like a little essential inspiration. So that was the idea behind it. And it still has popularity after all these years. So I did something right, I guess.
Yeah. And it's interesting they said they keep it on the nightstand. It's kind of like you talked about the mental side of things. Just seeing the book may spark. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. So two things that popped in my head. The first was, oh Lord, did I forget it that fast? With the cookbook. Oh, I'm sorry. With the other book that you mentioned, the dessert.
Eat Cake Naked?
Yes. Tell me that cheesecake is in there.
No. Sorry. I mean, I love a good cheesecake. There is an amazing pineapple cheesecake recipe on eatsomething.sexy.com, so do not miss that.
And that's on the list for men, and I love cheesecake. Boom. There you
go. No, there's an incredible key lime pie in Eat Cake Naked with a macadamia nut crust.
Interesting.
Because nuts are extremely good for men's sexual health.
I love trail mix.
Perfect. Yeah, nuts are great for men. Citrus is great for women. One pie for the two.
The second thought was my favorite cookie is oatmeal raisin. And so, is there oatmeal raisin in there?
No.
I'm just striking out on the book.
We have we have another recipe on eatsomething.sexy.com. It's it's a Chinese 5-spice oatmeal raisin cookie. It is so good. It's not my recipe. A friend of mine, Diane Brown, who also wrote an aphrodisiac cookbook, she created this crazy, amazingly good cookie recipe with spices.
So Chinese 5-spice oatmeal raisin cookie.
Yes.
Interesting.
Yes. I make it with craisins because I'm not into raisins, but those work too.
Yeah. Similar. Interesting. Okay. I'm coming back. No cheesecake, but we can figure it out. All right. So that's the end of the Q&A, and now I'd like to move to my favorite segment with my guests called First Thoughts. But first Thoughts is brought to you in part by SRA Solutions, simple solutions for complex problems. For over 15 years, SRA Solutions has provided today's solution to prevent tomorrow's problem. SRA Solutions will provide you effective, efficient, robust, and reliable business intelligence, application, website design, PC support services, and so much more. For more information, visit their website at www.sresolutions.org. So, Amy, my favorite segment of my guest is called First Thoughts. What that means is I give you a word or a phrase, and the idea is what's your first thought that comes to mind. Now, for those listening for the first time, like I always say, shame on you, but I'm happy you're here. I do not give my guests a hint because it would defeat the purpose of First Thoughts. So, Amy, are you ready?
Sure.
All right, here we go. So, first thought, make up sex as an aphrodisiac. What's your first thought?
Oh. Maybe. That's my thought. Well, maybe. Maybe.
Okay. Feel free to elaborate as much or as little as you want to. I know that kind of threw you a little bit, I could tell.
Yeah. Yeah, just maybe.
Okay. All right, next first thought, ginseng. What's your first thought?
Oh. I mean, that's kind of like, oh, be careful. That's my first thought. I mean, ginseng has, like, there's ginseng's powerful, and we don't truly understand, it's one of those herbs in traditional medicines that we don't fully understand, and I'm always use caution when there's something I don't really understand.
Okay. I remember growing up and always seeing these little bottles of ginseng at the local store or gas station. First of all, I always wondered why somebody was going to a gas station to get ginseng. But yeah, and how safe could that be? That's just a whole nother topic for another day.
Yes.
Like most things at a gas station behind the counter.
Right.
But I always wondered where that came from and why this similar bottle was at the Sunoco and the Wawa. We have Wawa on the East Coast. Whatever gas stations, Exxon, all those. It always just bothered me. Why is this in a gas station?
Yeah.
So, last first thought is, and I'll put this in the context of, let's say, more aphrodisiac. And feel free to expand as much as possible. Okay. A beach or a bedroom?
Oh, I mean, my first thought was beach, but beaches get messy. So, I mean, that depends on your level of tolerance for sand in places it shouldn't be.
Yeah. It's like rug burn with lint. I don't know.
Yeah, well, yeah. So, but beaches are great for romance. Maybe beaches are foreplay.
Okay. So, what was the choice? Beach or bedroom?
Beach or bedroom. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So, that's all my first thoughts. Wasn't that bad. But this season, I'm turning over the power to my guest before we wrap up in a segment called TO First Thoughts. The brainchild behind this idea is a very good friend of mine who we affectionately call each other TO. Kind of worked with the theme of this whole thing. But what the idea is, I offer first thoughts to my guests. Here's an opportunity for you to offer one back to me. So, Amy, anything you want to say, a word or a phrase, and I have to give you my first thought. What you got?
Oh. Ice cream.
Ice cream. In the context of this discussion, I'd say a nice frozen rock hard strawberry ice cream, just because pink on a woman, melting. You know, some people might say vanilla. I think pink is a much more seductive color. And so there's so many ways and places that ice cream can go, much like sand. I think, yeah. And in Philly, we have things called jimmies, and it just popped on my head for a specific reason related to this segment. But put jimmies on it, or sprinkles. Some people call them sprinkles. We call them jimmies. Put some jimmies on it, and then you get to eat the jimmies off the person, wherever they go.
Wherever they go. Okay.
Wherever they go.
All right.
It's a nice game. Should play that game sometime.
The strawberry ice cream game.
Yeah, and
make me a sundae.
Make me a sundae. There you go. And for added fun, instead of getting like the regular strawberry ice cream, get the ones where like the real strawberry in it, because it's almost like jimmies. They'll kind of disperse as well.
Yes.
There you go. I like this game. I got to try this game.
All right, Amy, Can I ask you another? I want to ask another.
Sure. Fire away.
Body sushi.
Body sushi. What first comes to mind is more than one person, because you have to put multiple ingredients in the sushi. So maybe like a menage a trois or menage a quattro, something like that, for different things inside the roll. That's the first thing that comes to mind. But also spiciness, because I love some wasabi. So, turn up the heat. I could see nice spicy drinks, kind of raising the temperatures.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right.
Body sushi. Interesting.
Body sushi.
Okay. Okay. Body sushi. Got to try that. Okay. Bringing it back. Okay. Amy, I do want to thank you for stepping to Dave's head. Before I let you go, I do like to allow my guests, or offer my guests, the opportunity. If there's anything you want to talk about or promote, feel free to do so now.
All right. Well, I want to invite everyone to check out eatsomethingsexy.com, because we talked about a lot of things that you can get more information on my website. And be sure to sign up for the mailing list, because as I mentioned, I've got some very fun things in the works, like that book for men to improve sexual health. So be sure to stop by and sign up.
And I'd add, check out the list, men or women. Check out the list to see what the
Yes.
preferred foods are for men and women. And if you're
Find your
couples,
foods.
combine.
Yep.
You never know.
Yeah,
All right,
definitely.
Amy. Thank you for stepping on Dave's head, and I promise you I will check out the list and the book.
Thank you so much.
My favorite segment of my podcast is my GRIN, which stands for Great Reason to Be in Love with Now. Watching the Masters this weekend, all the rain soakedness of it, my favorite golfer of all time, the reason I became interested in golf in the first place, Tiger Woods, did not win, but he did tie a Masters record by making the cut. And if you don't understand what a cut is, after 36 holes, I believe it's top 70 and tied golfers make it to the third and fourth round. If you're past the top 70, 71, 90, 150, whatever, depending on how many golfers are in the field, you're cut, if you will, from the rest of the tournament. You don't get to finish the tournament. So Tiger Woods tied a Masters record by making the cut for the 23rd consecutive time. 23 times in a row, he's entered the Masters tournament, and 23 times in a row, he's made it past the cut into the third round. However, unfortunately, because of the rains and the changes and the scheduling, because you had to end the round 2 early, finish round 3 early in the morning the next day. Finish round 2 early the next day, then go right into round 3 and finish that the next day and start round 4. That was his schedule. That was after the storms rolled through, where the trees fell and all types of stuff. After the second day, he aggravated his plantar fasciitis, I think it was that he said. And so he withdrew from the Masters after qualifying for the rest of the weekend. And it was going to be a grueling day for him. I mean, if you looked at the video footage of round 2, he was taking shots and just barely moving to the golf bag, or barely moving up to the green. It was painful to watch as a fan of his. But the third and fourth round, like I said, we're going to be played basically the same day. So you had to finish the second, play the third, you had to finish the third, the next day, play the fourth. If you've never played 2 rounds, or almost the equivalent of 2 rounds, they would have played on those 2 days in a single day. And by the way, I'm going to Myrtle in the next couple weeks. Guys trip. We're going to have a great old time. I'm going to do 7 rounds of golf in about 4 days, I think it is. We're going to do 3 36ers and 18. If you've never done it, and I've done it before, it's tiring. 36 holes in, 9, maybe 10 hours, maybe 11. It's a long day. It's a tiring day. It's a lot of swings. And if you're like me, you're threatening high 80s, low 90s is where you kind of comfortably can sit right now. And so you're looking at, let's say, 90. 90 swings times 2, so it's 180 swings. Minus, say, 70, because putts aren't really swings. They don't take a lot of toll on the body. So you're looking at 110 swings per day, 3 days in a row. It's a lot of swings. And he's a world-class athlete. And he's coming off that life-threatening accident. He's rehabbed his body. He's gotten himself somehow into golf playing shape, which that's commendable. Very, very commendable. And so for him, someone who, if you follow Tiger Woods' career, he had that stretch of dominance where he was getting the same year and different years. I think it's called the crown, not the Triple Crown, but whatever it's called, where you win the Masters, the U.S. Open, the FedEx. You win the one overseas I can't think of right now, the Open. You win basically the championships all in the same year. I mean, he was just unstoppable, and he would just get these leads, and nobody could catch him. He was just so dominant, so dominant. He would tear up the par fives. He made them change so many courses to make them longer because he was so long and dominant. But you've got to imagine going from that level of dominance to where you are now, barely walking to your golf bag after a swing. It's got to be tough. It's got to be extremely, extremely hard. The Injured Athletes Club at www.injuredathletesclub.com is a collaboration between mental skills coach Carrie Jackson and freelance journalist, Cindy Kuzma. They created a community of support and resources to make the injury journey easier. to them, quote, so you can come back even stronger. Now, they have several tools in their sites, from books, and one particular book, Rebound, Train Your Mind to Bounce Back Stronger from Sports Injuries. They have a podcast where they share stories and advice from actual athletes, a Facebook group, worksheets from that book, and even more resources. Now, I've been hurt several times through my football career. My dominant sport was always football. I have played baseball, I have played softball, I have played tennis, I have played basketball, and I've also played baseball, or I think I said baseball. I played a lot of sports, but my dominant sport, my focus sport, was always football. Played college, semi-pro, recreational, tournaments, flag, rough touch, all these stuff. Still play today, even though I've retired like 4 times. I've been hurt several times. 2 concussions, separated shoulder, sprained ankles. I literally sprained both ankles on the same play. Another story for another day. I don't even know how that possibly happened. Both ankles, same play. Countless jam fingers. If you're watching on YouTube or Spotify right now, this finger right here that I'm pointing to, if you look, it's way bigger than its counterpart over here. Bigger. Look at that guy. Look how fat that is. And the small version of it. Jammed this finger so many times I've lost count. It's easily 20, 30 times. To the point where I jammed it a couple weeks ago. I just popped it out a little bit the other day. It's never going to be back to this size, ever. Turf toe, which I didn't even develop that until a couple years ago. I cut very hard. I've always played corner all my life for the most part. I played safety, played corner, played receiver, punt return, kick return, punter, holder for field goals. I played all these positions. I'm very fast. And so a lot of pressure on my feet, a lot of runs, a lot of steps over the course of my football life. And so turf toe is one of the things I've started to develop. Also some left knee soreness. That actually didn't even happen from football. I work out as I normally do throughout the week, stay in shape. And I just was doing a kind of total body workout that lasted about 45 minutes and kind of misstepped. It was just a kind of a misstep and tweaked something. But my knee, inside of my knee, has been a little sore and stiff. But I've been injured one time. And all those things I mentioned, I will say none of them kept me out of football for a long period of time. The separated shoulder did keep me out of one game. And I will say, of all the injuries I've had, or all the times being hurt, the separated shoulder was probably the most painful in a short period of time. Not when it actually happened. I was intercepted. I intercepted a pass. I was running it back. I got tackled, put my arm down to brace myself, felt something a little weird. And I remember verbally saying out loud, ouch. And I remember a big offense or defensive lineman me picking me up, like grabbing me by shoulder pads, saying, "You're not hurt." I'm like, "Okay, I'm not hurt." No, I didn't make that voice. But literally like, "Okay, I'm cool. I'm not hurt." Went to the sideline. And I remember halftime sitting on the floor against the locker and my shoulder was just killing me. And then halftime was over. I'm like, okay, cool. Went back out. I'm jamming. I'm making tackles, all this stuff. And I go up to the trainer after the game is over. It was a playoff game. We won. I go up to the trainer. I say, "Hey, my shoulder is killing me. Can you take a look?" She reaches her hand up under my pad. And she's like, "When did this happen?" I said, "My interception when I went to the ground." She said, "The first half?" I'm like, "Yeah." She said, "Come here." She put her hand up there and moved stuff around and yanked it down. I'm going to tell you, the pain of popping that thing back in was worse than the pain of the injury and everything, all the hits and all that stuff I did that day. And I'm using my arm. Nuts. What was even worse than that was the recovery pain that night. Literally just popping ibuprofens because the pain in my shoulder, everything I did at that point was just painful. Sneezing, breathing too hard, rolling over, moving, getting up to go to the bathroom. Everything just hurt. You don't realize how much of the non-direct things in your body you use, like standing up. You can stand up without the use of your arms. You can literally, if your core is tight, you can just stand up. However, you don't realize how much your shoulder moves or is rotated or your back is turning and twisting just to stand up. You don't realize how much your core muscles you use to sit up and lay down. How much you're just moving your shoulder a little bit. Even if that little movement, if you're watching on YouTube or Spotify, even that little movement, I can feel my shoulder rotate slightly, barely. Imagine everything you do, intense pain. And that's what it was, recovering that night. And so the worst for me mentally, though, was me actually being injured. Only one time this happened in my football life. And telling the story is bittersweet because I was actually hurt during a championship game with about, say, 3 or so minutes left in the game. It was a game that I balled out. I think I had 2 touchdowns. I think I had 2 interceptions already. They were hanging tough though. We were 2 scores away. I remember my last touchdown, post corner route, mean post corner route, gave us that 2-score lead. And so pass gets thrown in my general direction. I see it. I'm like, oh, I got this. I go up in the air, go to pick it off, and I get hit. Now, granted, I'll be the first to admit I should have just held onto the ball. Shouldn't have dropped it. Would have been my 3rd interception, but it's cool. I still got player of the game for the championship. But what got me was it was actually friendly fire. My own teammate hit my knee trying to go for the interception. He never got up in the air. I did. And so I come down on the ground. Ball falls. I don't pick off the pass. So I'm mostly annoyed by that because I don't realize my knee is messed up at this point. I go to stand up and I go to jog back towards the huddle because it was a little ways down the field. And I take my first step and fall to the ground. And I'm like, what the hell is... Oh, okay. Like maybe I tweaked something because I didn't feel any pain when it happened. It's an outside hit to the knee, tore my MCL. Grade 2, this close to grade 3. Difference between grade 2 and grade 3 is grade 3, the ligament's literally coming off the bone, detaching from the bone, and it's actually torn, needs surgery. Grade 2, grade 1, fun fact, I found out the MCL is the only ligament in the knee where if it's not completely torn, heals itself. And so I had a brace on my knee, sitting on a couch for 6 weeks. Leg elevated, working from home at that time for a company that I was not working from home before that, but I'm working from home on the couch and literally for 6 weeks. And the doctor, the specialist told me because of the MCL, because it's only grade 2, you're going to be fine. It's going to heal itself. One day your mobility will just return almost to normal, pretty much 95% of the way there. One day you'll wake up, there'll be no pain. There was pain climbing steps, coming down steps, anytime I moved, anything for about a good 5.5, almost 6 weeks. And then one day I get up to go to the bathroom, go to climb the steps, and I go to do my little hop up the steps. I'm like, wait, that didn't hurt. Literally, it was just like that. One day I woke up, no more pain. And so what was tough for me was sitting on that couch for 6 weeks. I'm extremely active. I'm working out. I love to cook. I love to travel. I love to go out and socialize and happy hours and do all these things, except I got to take crutches everywhere now. I can't do my workouts. I can't do a full body workout with one leg. I can do chest. But even that, there's pressure on the leg because you have to keep it elevated. You can't bend it in certain ways. So I can't do strong benches. I can't do things where I'm just used to moving without difficulty. And so this type of support, the Injured Athletes Club, would have been something extremely beneficial to me. Now, I didn't have a mental break or anything like that, but I'm sure there are people out there who've excelled in athleticism and athletics their entire life. And that one injury shuts down your normal daily routine. And think about this, not just sports, life. It impacted so much of my life. I literally freshened up in the morning, hopped my way down the steps to the couch every day, almost for 6 weeks. I remember I think I had a wedding at some point during that, so I had to kind of get dressed. I'm on crutches, and it's so odd because now instead of my leg being elevated, it's kind of extended. I'm sitting there, I was so uncomfortable for the wedding the entire time. It changed your life. It changed my life because it made everything normal difficult. And I'm used to being a certain body fat percentage, and I'm sitting on the couch for 6 weeks, so that percentage just crept up. And by the time now it's time to do my drills and training to get my knee back to strength 100% of the way there, the flexibility and the pain are gone. And the flexibility is there now, but the strength of it, you got to work on. But now I realize, wait, now I'm out of shape. Cardio out of shape, strength out of shape. You lose things just sitting on a couch. There's a reason why people don't want you to be sedentary, especially older people. Something I tell my dad all the time, just go for a walk. He's in his 80s now. Just go for a walk to the neighborhood park. Go walk around the block. You don't want to become sedentary because you lose muscle mass. You lose the abilities and agilities and the sports acumen, even those things. You gain fat. You gain laziness. You create patterns where they weren't there before. I never used to sit on the couch. Now I hit my couch all the time. It may have come from that, may not. But this type of support would have been great to have back then when going through this, not necessarily because I needed the mental support, but to understand as an athlete, as a semi-professional athlete, as someone who's been playing sports for 20 plus years, pretty much nonstop, how having injury interrupt that path, how you can handle it. And so I urge you to check out the site, the Injured Athletes Club, www.injuredathletesclub.com. The books, which is an audiobook as well. The Facebook group, worksheets you can do to get yourself back to, as they say, even stronger. Check them out. www.injuredathletesclub.com. I want to thank Amy Reiley for stepping into Dave's head and dropping some aphrodisiac, my word, dimes on us. I'm thankful I love pineapples. I'm thankful I love watermelons. I do have to figure out some kind of way to do cheesecake and see, whatever recipe, because the sugars in the cheesecake, I imagine sugars probably aren't, especially cheesecake uses a lot of white sugar, at least the recipe that I use, which is not necessarily good for you anyway. But can I make a cheesecake that's an aphrodisiac now? If I can do that, just saying. But check out our website at www.eatsomethingsexy.com. Find her on Facebook. Just do a search for Wines and Food, all one word. And check her out on Twitter at Fork Me Spoon Me, which, by the way, great title. Fork Me Spoon Me. Check out the book, the same title, Fork Me Spoon Me, The Sensual Cookbook. Check it out on Amazon. Support our sponsors, Dig'em Movers, at www.dig'emmovers.com for all your local and long distance moving needs. And SRE Solutions, Inc. at www.sresolutions.org for all your PC support, website design, network cable runs, etc., etc., etc. And if you're interested in sponsoring on Dave's Head, hit me up on any of my social media, and we can definitely make it happen. Before I let you go, and I know you're expecting something different there, before I let you go in this episode, I do want to send love and shout out my siblings. The day I'm recording this happens to be National Siblings Day. To my older sister, Danelle, my two younger brothers, Demetrius and Daniel, I love you. Happy Siblings Day. So protests, aphrodisiacs, and bouncing back. All great reasons to be in love with now. That's all for this episode of Dave's Head. New episodes released on the second and fourth Friday of the month. For all things Dave's Head, check out our website at daveshead.card.co. Subscribe to watch new episodes on YouTube or Spotify video, or to listen via your preferred podcast player, go to anchor.fm/Dave's Head Pod. Thank you for watching or listening. As always, enjoy life, because life should be fun. Take care.